This week we have a cedar chest. This piece I got for free off of Facebook Marketplace, and I don't think I would have paid $1 for it. It was really in rough shape. But I like projects like this because they give us a great chance to transform into something beautiful. So, as always, we start out with our bath time. I used trisodium phosphate in a rag and give this guy a good scrub down. Just a quick safety tip when using a product like trisodium phosphate or TSP. You want to go ahead and put your rubber gloves on because it is a pretty strong cleaner. You just want to use good precaution. I probably should have safety glasses on here, but I guess I like to live life a little on the danger side.
Well, I got the piece cleaned up, so that part's done. But during the cleaning, I noticed that all of the joints of this piece have come apart. There's no glue. They're just dowels and mechanical fasteners that have come loose over the years. So I'm going to have to spend some time and really firm up the structure of this box before we move forward. Now this piece was put together using pins in this little twisty lock. You can see how loose this back is. If I give this dial here about a quarter turn, that does tighten up the back. But I think I'm going to go ahead and get some glue in this joint here just to give this back piece some more stability. Now that I've got some glue in that joint, I'm going to add a couple of brads to help hold it when I take these clamps off. Now while that glue is drying up, I'm going to go ahead and tackle this damage that we have in this lower corner here. I think the best way to solve this problem is to use a wood epoxy. So I'm just going to go ahead and rip off a little piece here and see if we can't reform that corner to be more natural looking. Now of course you always want to wear gloves when you're working with an epoxy because it's not good for your skin. But it's really easy to work with and you shouldn't be intimidated by it. So now it's time to go ahead and get this hardware off the front of the unit. I do plan to reuse this, so I want to be sure I don't lose any of the screws. This upholstered top has to come off. My vision for this piece is to have a painted top. Oh, looks like that's probably fastened on there pretty well. Before I even started this flip, I knew I was going to take this upholstered top off, as well as the decorative trim that goes around the outside. And unfortunately, when I broke that trim off, I have a lot of damage on the top of this piece. You can see pretty clearly that this is simply a particle board box with a very, very thin veneer stuck over the top of it. So at this point, I'm going to need to use some wood putty and fill these gaps all the way around the top and sand it down.
I had a lot of surface area to patch, so I went ahead and grabbed my Durham's water putty. This comes in a can, it's a powder, and you simply mix it with water. You can really make it as thick as you want or as thin as you want. You can see here that I went really thin with that mixture. I was thinking it might help fill in those gaps, but I think a thicker paste might have been a little bit better. But in the end, it did the job, and I was able to fill those gaps. Well, that wood epoxy is cured up, so I went ahead and grabbed my random orbital sander and some 80 grit paper, and I basically just buffed off everything that didn't look like a cedar chest to me. And I think in the end it turned out okay. Well, great news, the top is dry, and I was able to change out that paper to 120 grit and smooth out all of that Durham's water putty that we had just put on, maybe in an hour or so before. In keeping with the same paper, the 120 grit, I gave the piece a pretty quick scuff sand. Now the idea of the scuff sand is just to give a rougher surface for that primer to stick to. This piece definitely needed a primer before it was painted. So I just went over it real quick. Nothing fancy, I didn't get too crazy with this. Well, with that scuff sand done, this piece certainly looks funny right now, but that's no worry, we'll take care of that in just a couple of minutes. But before we do anything else, it's time to wipe it down and get all the dust off the piece. Give ourselves a nice clean canvas. So today we're going to be using a primer, the Kills 3. The only reason I'm using that is it was on my shelf and I had it from a previous project. While that coat of primer dries, I turned my attention to this hardware. Sometimes I like gold, but for this piece I'm going black, so I just grabbed some spray paint from the shelf and gave them a quick squirt. Now we're on to the quick sand, that primer. And I'm really just looking for any drips or any rough spots before we get started with the top coat. The name of the game on this flip is to keep it as cheap as possible. So when it came time to pick the top coat, I went over to my shelf and found some Valspar furniture and cabinet paint. I've had it for quite some time, so it definitely needed a good stir, but I think this is just the color I'm looking for. No one likes to clean paintbrushes, so I'm going to go ahead and stick this guy in this little bag. That way he'll remain nice and soft when it comes time for the second coat of black on the top. They sell these as color samples, but there's more than enough paint in this little jar for me to paint the entire outside of this little chest. Now I went with a kind of an off-white color. I really didn't want the black and white contrast, so this is close but a little bit softer. I think it's going to look nice when we're done. Well, I did forget to take a video of me putting the hardware back on, but here we are. A nice simple cedar chest. A nice soft white, black hardware, a nice black top. I think that contrast looks sharp. It's definitely come a long ways from where we started. So, on to the next chapter of its life. Rather than selling this piece, we donated it to the local Habitat for Humanity. Now these folks can sell it for a few dollars and help their cause, and hopefully this chest goes on for a whole new chapter in life.